Okay, we're here at the Herbert Hoover Presidential Library and Museum, and basically campus of where he grew up. Pretty much, I think if you look down this way, I'm pretty sure this is my first stop. I'm actually going to the grave first because the museum will open only in a few minutes. Today is Sunday, November 17th, 2024, and it's just a couple minutes, about 8-10 minutes before 9 a.m. when the museum opens. But that area, and that's possibly the house, I'll know more. I think it was only a 2-room house, so I'm not sure if that's quite the one, but where he basically was born and had a couple years of life before the family moved. But what I'm here for, this whole campus, it's a nice walking area. A lot of people come out, bring their dogs, jog, etc. In fact, coming this way, there's a couple of ladies down the street that are doing a walk. So because the museum isn't quite open yet, I'm doing a quick run to the grave site. Here's a little statement here about it. Take a minute to let you look at that. To read it, it says, President Herbert Hoover died in New York City on October 20th, 1964, at the age of 90. At the time, the oldest president, now no longer the case. 5 days later, his body was interred on this hillside overlooking his birthplace and presidential library, a symbolic vista of his journey from birth to death. The remains of Lou Henry Hoover, who died January 7, 1944, were removed from California and placed beside her husband. Their son Alan selected the gravesite. Iowa architect William Wagner designed the memorial in collaboration with the Hoover family and William Anderson of the Hoover Birthplace Society. The 2 plainly inscribed gravestones reflect Quaker simplicity. So, some other pictures that are listed here. Military honor guard carried Hoover's casket to the gravesite. More than 100,000 people lined the funeral procession from Cedar Rapids to West Branch. Get a little closer here. Before Hoover's burial in the West Branch, a service was held in New York City, and his body lay in state at the Capitol Rotunda in Washington. So it was moved around a little bit, of course. And then LBJ, not quite, but close to a year, August 12, 1965, not quite close to a year after his death. One of the rich and rewarding inspirations of my life was to know him. I shall always cherish his wisdom and his insights, but most especially, I shall cherish the inspiration of his character. So he said that upon signing the law establishing the Herbert Hoover National Historic Site, which again is basically what all of this wonderful area is. So, all right, so that's that information there. I'll have to check out that observation deck perhaps. But first, maybe I'll go this way because it does say the gravesite could be both directions. Take a walk and see what we see here. This site is barely a half mile off Interstate 80 in West Branch, Iowa. I guess this would be a reconstructed prairie. That's what this says. as I'm hearing the chimes of a nearby church bell, which must signify 9 a.m. As a boy, Herbert Hoover visited his relatives at their farm on the top of this hill. Isaac and Esther Miles' 100-acre property was typical of the self-sufficient farms that surrounded West Branch. 1880, they had 73 acres under cultivation with corn, oats, rye, potatoes, and apples. Besides farming, Isaac helped his brother Benjamin run an Indian industrial school in West Branch. Herbert Hoover played, hunted, and fished with some of the students who worked on the farm. Fishing became Hoover's favorite pastime as an adult. The barn and the house are the only remaining structures that were here when Hoover was a boy. I believe that we're talking about these buildings way up here. As if you might be able to see by looking around, everything else is basically a prairie type setting. With the efficient instruction on the use of bows and arrows from a real-life live American Indian boy, we did bring down a pigeon or a prairie chicken. That is Herbert Hoover quote right there. So, and then according to the 1880 census, this farm had the breakdown of animals as you can see there. Okay. Tall grass and open skies. This landscape offers a glimpse of the tall grass prairie that once covered 85% of Iowa. By the time of Herbert Hoover's birth in 1874, farmers were converting much of the state's prairie to cropland. When Hoover was a boy, Isaac Miles raised crops here. In 1971, the National Park Service replanted prairie grasses. This complemented the solitude of the president's gravesite and controlled erosion and runoff. Instead of crops, big blue stem Indian grass and wild rye dominate the scene. He had a love of outdoors as a boy, which led to geology studies at Stanford, his mining career, and his establishment of national parks and forests as president. And colorful native coneflowers dot the prairie during the summer. Grasses grow, and tall grass prairie plants have extremely deep roots as well. All right, so again, all this is right next to the grave site. Which is, I believe, going to be our next stop. As you can kind of see, it's overcast skies today. Temperatures right now, and it's just after 9 o'clock. We are at about 48 degrees. So let me give a look here. It is a little bit of a high rise. I wasn't necessarily expecting this based on information that I had. There are the two ladies again walking. They've done a nice complete loop. But here we are approaching the actual gravesite of President and Mrs. Hoover. Some benches up here. Not sure if there's any significance to these stone slabs. But President Hoover is on the left, and Lou Henry Hoover, his wife, on the right. Zooming in. You can see birth and death dates. They were both born the same year, but Lou Henry was born basically in the spring. I don't remember if it was March or April at the moment off the top of my head. Obviously, it can be easily looked up. And I believe Herbert Hoover sometime August, September, October, if memory serves. So she was a little bit older than him. And just turning around. So again, that house way down there, I have seen other videos, so I'm pretty certain that that was the birthplace cottage, and I can tell that it's a very, very small structure. The fence, from my earlier perspective, from at least where I was standing, maybe the video does show something better, but the fence maybe tricks you into a little bit thinking it's bigger, but it's a really small building. The other thing I was looking to see, was very interesting. Somebody had taken a video, a different person who was interested in grave sites and likes history, and had noted that despite all of the simplicity of the area, that there still was a sense of commercialization. And I don't see it now. Maybe, do I? No. Might be behind this tree, I'm not sure. That's a barn of some kind. But you could see, because again, it's only a half mile away, a McDonald's sign. There is a McDonald's at the exit here. And the point of the whole thing that he was pointing out was, despite all of this serenity and peacefulness and a sense of, life in the 1870s, 1880s here, that there was one sign of things creeping in, of commercialization of the day. However, I do notice, right, that there is a different building. I know there was a Subway sandwich shop in here and a few other things. Looks like there's a gas station. So even though the McDonald's sign, which was recorded a few years ago at the site, is not present, you still see the commercialization. Now obviously we have the roadway around here. I mean, there's our vehicle, of course, and there's other vehicles, etc. You're not going to completely take everything away, but nevertheless, just pointing it out. It's how things do creep in. But once again, the grave sites of the president and Mrs. Hoover. Having watched, plenty of film on all presidents, I think Hoover, great humanitarian, fed Europe really more than once. He was asked to do it again on a little bit less grand scale in the after World War II. I believe President Truman had involvement in that, maybe Eisenhower as well, asking him for his assistance. But he tried to do things, in fact, very, very simplistically said, some of the things he tried to do, or was starting to do, or was trying to have work, Roosevelt continued and really got the credit, because it was really after Roosevelt's administration that things started to turn around. So in fact, I believe it was the New York Times 1929 October was the stock market crash, right? And the New York Times listed the biggest events of the year, and that wasn't even on the list. The crash itself, at the time, it was only like 2.5% of Americans really invested in stock market, and it didn't affect a lot of people immediately, as suggested. So obviously anybody who suffered through the Depression, most of them are long gone now, but nevertheless, it was an interesting time, and I feel for them, but it wasn't necessarily all because of the stock market crash. So, all right, so Herbert Hoover and Lou Henry Hoover, and this is their final resting place. May God bless them. And time for me to move on to the museum and see what happens over there. So, thanks for watching this long video. Bye.